on, folks? This is Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and we are looking at the Far Harad, the Scorched Land, set in southern Middle-earth from Iron Crown Enterprises for MERP, Middle-earth role-playing game system. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I like these kind of supplements, even though, let's accept the fact that this is purely non-canon, or this is beta canon. It's stuff created by the writers and enthusiasts of J.R.R. Tolkien's works. There's very, very few concrete leads or ties that J.R.R. Tolkien left behind in his works to talk about some of these far foreign lands. And the fact that Iron Crown Enterprises and the creators there tried to bridge or fill in many of the missing gaps in the Middle-earth world concept as we know it and did it so with some pretty good flavor that didn't take it. It still tastes like Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth, not something that was concocted for a ubiquitous number of fantasy settings and or for Dungeons and Dragons, for example. So these are not overly thick supplements, and there's a number of them, right? But they do add quite a bit of missing pieces. So when we look at the great scenes, the battle scenes at the Pelennor Fields, and we see and hear references of the Easterlings and the Southrons and so on and so forth, we don't really have a whole lot to go on other than what they're in the books and in the movies. So this allows us to have a bigger view and expanded insight into Middle-earth in general. In my opinion, of course, this is all based on whatever you want to call it. So, right, this was printed in 1988. The book's in pretty good shape for 1988, right? So it says a campaign module suited for the use of Middle-earth role-playing, Rollmaster, Fantasy Hero, most other major fantasy role-playing games. Adventurers find the Far Harad rich with challenge. In the port of the city of Dar, hired swords are always in demand. The vast desert looms ominously with its secretive population of Sandman and natural hardship. Men tell of entire cities swallowed by the Dune Sea. Ghosts and demons are said to walk in shifting land, guarding treasures beyond the imagination. This and more await the brave in the Scorched Land. And there is a beautiful map that goes with this, and I don't have it, or I can't find it. Or at least not the complete map. That, or I haven't looked hard enough, which is plausible. You know, sometimes I do a lot of prep work for my videos, and sometimes not so much because, you know, look, I'm doing it for fun, not for gain in any way whatsoever. So anyway, we have our definitions and terms, terminology, our adapting the module to your campaign, adapting it to pretty much any game system you prefer. Notes on levels, skill bonuses, locks, traps, converting spells and spell lists. Introduction. Far to the south of the warring realms of Gondor and Mordor, encompassing the lower half of the greater desert of the Hardwith, lies an area of harsh winds and blazing sun known as its inhabitants as the Bazash Baraz. On the maps of the northern world, the region is labeled the Far Harad. The people who dwell here have passed in and outside of Middle-earth's great powers, but in times of great conflict between light and dark, such remote regions have been left to fend for themselves in favor of more important lands to the north. Thus, the piece of land, while it's been swayed by outsiders, has always been given time to return to its traditional ways when greater nations grow distracted. Something that there are mentions of Aragorn's travels when he was a younger man. He was urged by Elrod and a few others, I'm sure, to expand his knowledge for no other reason. I mean, he had important reasons or missions and things like that he went off on. I'm not detracting from that, but he traveled to a lot of these far lands, and I believe in my imagination that this would be one of those lands where he spent a number of, maybe a couple of years traveling, getting to know the local populations, the traditions, to understand these men that someday he was going to be in conflict with and potentially need to negotiate and have treaty with. A lot of these far lands compared to Gondor in the west have seen influence of the Dark Lord for millennia, as well as to other dark forces, but they doesn't necessarily make them evil men. These are men who have motivations that are different from the West. They've also have deep memories and experiences from the days of the Numerians, who came and imposed, in some aspects, rulership over sections of these regions, and in others where they were never under the influence or sway of the West in any form. And a lot of it, keep in mind too, that a lot of these lands of men have spent the majority of their time, the bulk of their time, not being embroiled in politics and involved in elven politics or elven issues of the Second Age, for example. So they don't have those influences that the West does. Their influences are quite vastly different. So we have the land of the Harad, the geography, shaping the land, far arid after 1640, which is the traditional setting, 6 years after the plague or 4 years after the plague region, and about 1,000 years before the War of the Ring. Desert regions, the Dune Sea, the arid lands, the climate, a weather table, winds and desert storms, flora and fauna, life in the lands of the Ra. Even within the area as small as Iraq, a great variety of differing environments exist. The hills, the forests to the north, the woods to the east, shelter distinct, although not completely separate biological communities. Here is, in any arid or semi-arid region, the availability of life-giving water determines the biology of the area. So we have plants and animals. Of course, they all got some pretty exotic names, which I am not even going to begin to try to pronounce. Fauna, we got the Valk is a wild dog. The Zama, it's a type of snake. The Oro is a great bird, quite similar to the eagles of the north. And we got the Suzanne Summer, northwest of the Rajashi is the Suzanne Summer, the Forest of Tears, in which an arid land in this region is an anomaly. And I think there's actually an adventure module set in or near the Forest of Tears as well. We got the flora and fauna of the Forest of Tears. The gage, life among the tough trees. The gage is not too different from what is found in the surrounding hills. The Bozus and the Kalatoon, like I said, I pronounce it, grow here, though less commonly. Animals of the hills wanders that grow. So we got flora, three kinds of trees, blah, blah, blah. We got some fauna. The Majun, or the Majun, among the trees of the gods, there's hordes of lively monkeys, which is what their name is. The desert, supernatural beings of the hardwood. In addition to natural creatures native to the region, several specimens of unnatural or magical beings are found in lonely areas of the desert. Harridan legends recall dozens of different encounters with such monsters, but it's difficult to say, of course, which tales to credit and which to put down as foolish superstition. So, however, the following are several of which are undeniably real. So, sand devils. Men who die in desert storms have been known to linger on in Middle Earth as tortured spirits known as sand devils. The Lucina tracts of land surrounding the Raj act as unmarked graves of thousands of centuries. These few, basically zombies. Sand drakes, and it goes without saying. The Razarak, the most terrible dizzying of the Hardwoods, is known as the Destroyer. Like a Bolrog of Moria, though not nearly as powerful. Some kind of devil. Devil or demon. Peoples and the culture, the religion, quite a bit of information on that. Culture and traits, parents, views of life and death. Men of the Far Harad resemble their southern neighbors in the Mumakan. Southern Harad are tall and wiry with dark skin and black hair. Their eyes are also dark, usually black or brown. Facial features fill a remarkably wide spectrum, with members of one clan tending to have broad, flat faces, curly hair, others show sharper lines, blah, blah, blah. Views of life and death, attitudes and outlook, family life, language, social classes, role of wealth, garb, diet, leisure, politics, and power. Governance in the Far Harad is an elusive concept. Through the elite of the Bazar would assert otherwise, no single authority holds sway over the people. It's more accurate to say that power is naturally tossed about in an unquiet sea of a political interplay. National authority is often in the hands of a single man, but that man is always backed by a tenuous coalition of clan heads and power brokers across the land. So we got the government, the trustee, and the Dar. two holy cities, been home to extremes of the Harad culture, even a quiet the war and the Herodis. So throughout their history, the people of Far Harad have had little use for what other states would call organized war. The nation has never aspired to conquest, and their natural defenses are such that none of the empire builders have risen in the south have been willing to risk an all-out attack. Thus, standing armies are not part of the military scheme here. It's not to say, however, warcraft is unknown in the region. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. The Harad was focused on two professions. One is the nomadic vocation of the caravan trader. The other is the warrior. So, for the most part, every male of significant age can pick up a weapon and use it fairly confidently. Some better than others, of course, most traditions, etc. So the treasury, the economy, the hills, the deep desert, organizations of group, the elite families, the guilds, masters of power, the college of shamans, the clans. The people of the Dar have grown to give less importance to their extended family ties to lands outside the city's immediate sphere. Influence clan ties are strong as they have ever been. The impact of these groups on the politics of the nation is twofold. In the first place, they represent a fair degree of economic power, having a great deal of gold from caravan trains which they guard and plunder. This puts them in a position to back the men they choose for bids of power among the city's elite. Second, they represent the threat of rebellion, or at least of disruption. Hot-tempered clan heads have shown themselves quite willing to extend their political points of view by force of arms as necessary. Thus, though, in most affairs of state, the clansmen actually have very little interest. Their potential reactions are never disregarded by the regent counselors when they take a decision. Don't want to cheese these people off. Peoples of note, so key NPCs that your particular characters could encounter while adventuring in the Far Harad. Leaders. The Bashidar, the larger city of the Raj, is known to the people as Basishidar, or the gift of the goddess, after the relatively hospitable region that surrounds it. The city is set at the mouth of the Rajashi River and is made up of an interesting collection of buildings ranging from desert tents and hutments to grand palaces built in high Numerian style, carried over from older times when the sea lords made landings here. The majority of the buildings, though, are mud and brick and covered in white plaster. So wearing uniform, they serve to make any building a different style seem all that more outlandish. The Cathedral and the Seven Mansions is the House of the Feast. So we got some breakdowns of various mansions that the seven key leader positions of the city maintain. It's an interesting note that these mansions are actually owned by the city and not by individual clans or families, but they're rented to. So the people who occupy them are in de facto heads of whatever organization or part of the government that they represent. But in order to get that, they have to spend a lot and lots and lots of money. So they're basically buying their position and they're renting their place. And if somebody else can come along with much more financial means, this is one of the reasons why those clan lords and all their money play such a pivotal role in the politics of the region, because he who has the gold makes the rules. Just putting it out there. House of Warcraft, the Nomad's Home, House of Wood. Says like here, the fitting that the region who resides in this house, which represents the most encourageable element of the heritage landscape, should fill the role as ambassador for foreign powers. The building is like the Forest of Tears. It seems out of place in the heritage arid climate, built of wood and carried by a crew of craftsmen. The house holds skylights of green glass and hundreds of trickling fountains, leaving the feeling of standing in the heart of a rainforest. Soul of the desert. The last of the seven mansions to be built was to capture an aspect of heritage, the most well known, the desert itself. Stone and color, sand, blah, blah, blah. Furnishings are beached wood, white cloth, are sparse and simple. Houses more than any others succeeds in conveying the spirit which is at its monument. It captures the soul of the desert. It eases the duties of regents who take this house. He is the ambassador to the nomads. All right. Seller's Court, shop district, and municipal quarter, residences, guild halls, caravan grounds, the merchants' quarter and the poor quarter, the tradesman's home and port, surrounding lands, the forequarter, the city of Tristi. Southeast is the Basashi Dar, where the hills of the moon meet the Gaj. Travelers and caravans pass through the city of the Tristi, Tresti, Neither wealthy nor cosmopolitan in this town, they appear to be backwards in most eyes of most folk. Folk who live here prefer to be termed parvi or proper. As the Dar, the focus of the Far Harad's political and economic activity, the Tristi is the center of the religion. It is here that the body of the great hero Junast is said to have been brought after his ordeal in the land of Batra. Legend recalls the great well at the city center was created by the goddess to mark her champion's grave, and from it the entire city is watered. To honor the place, two institutions have their homes within the city walls: the College of Shamans and Eunice Guard. Around the well itself is a garden surrounded by a circular wall. Outside the wall are six neighborhoods of the city, which hold the buildings of two orders, along with the shops, taverns, hostels, homes of the citizens who cater to the needs of the pilgrims from all across the Harad. Closing everything is a second wall, which marks the furthest extent of watered land. There's the layout of the city. You got the well, Garden of the Well, the barracks, College Salmons, Temple District, Merchants of Kotar, the night quarters, tent cities. There's kind of a layout of the city. Daily life, a desert fastness. For miles outside the city of Basashi Dar, across the bridge, majestic and stretching far into the actual desert lands lies a scattering of small, close-knit communities tucked into pockets wherever men have found a place to fortify. These strongholds are homes of warrior clans, and here tough family groups live out a life that any man would call hard. From their trials, they've grown into a breed of fighters, the like which is rarely seen in Middle Earth. They live and fight from early childhood with a tradition of piety and honor legendary among even the tough folk of the Harad. Right? The history. This is the layout of the Gussers, the Jebel, I guess it matters whether the J is silent. The hill is the home of the Gusser clan, or the D is silent. The Gusser clan, and one of the finest sights from the camp of all the Harad, mixes the Bandit clan's three most favored terrain features. The one portable fortress has advantage of height, raising several hundred feet above the surrounding flats. Its slopes are riddled with water-carved tunnels and gullies worked by clansmen in a network of trenches to slow any army to a crawl, even if there was not to defend by the viciously formal warriors of the family. At the crown, on a small secondary hillhawk, they had refitted a fort that was older than any tale that Gersers tell, and make their homes and mess halls and workshops within. So here's a picture. Masada, kind of what it makes me think of, but maybe not quite. Other places to note: the oasis of Sakana. You can have a desert without an oasis. The state of the ice cellar, citadel of Reparo, the ice tunnel, the great oasis, an ice tunnel, device to manufacture ice in the heat of the desert. And I've heard of things like this actually work. So, other Harad cities, avenues of trade. Lost. So we got some adventures: theft in the poor quarter, the lost caravan, excursions to the oasis, Sangaranos mark other suggested adventures. So master NPC table, master military table, lots of good stuff, lots of good information, lots of interest. I ran one campaign back when I was in my 20s, and it stands out because it lasted almost 2 years with the same group of people, and we were meeting every 2 weeks for a Friday night or Saturday night, depending on people's work schedules at the time, and we ran quite collectively. And what we did was we ran characters that were locals from here, and we didn't involve things from the West and Gondor and stuff like that, other than brief mention rumors and stuff like that. But it turned out to be a really fun and interesting campaign in a very unique setting and environment, not unlike great tales of like the Arabian Nights and so on and so forth. So there you have it. This is Rick, and you're seated at the table. Until next time.